Hey everybody, welcome to a new year and a new Facebook Live, the first one of 2022. I'm your host, Jess.
And I'm your host, Lauren.
And today we are going to be doing a really incredible interview with one of our hiring managers, Kristen. New year, new career. We're going to go over a lot of really awesome interview tips, resume tips. But first, Lauren is going to do our Facebook Live etiquette, just to let you guys know some ins and outs of what to do during this live.
Sounds good. So definitely do like and share this with your friends who also might have their resolution set to be looking for a new career or leveling up in their current career. It's good to have goals. So we're looking for the big goals, which is getting that really great job and really rocking your interviews. So if you want to share this, please do. Also, if you have any questions or feedback or tips that have worked really well for you in interviews, please share those in the comments because we want to see what you have to say. The only thing that we ask that you don't do is share any personal information in the comments because of course they're public. So, don't give away any personal information there. If you do need to talk to us privately, feel free to give us a call. If you're a current student, you can call us at our student services number. That is 1-888-427-1000. If you are not a Penn Foster student yet, but are thinking about becoming one and have some questions, want to talk with us, you can call admissions at 1-888-427-6500. Now, with that being said, we're going to get into the good stuff because we have a lot of exciting topics to cover today with Kristen. She is a talent acquisition associate here at Penn Foster. She has a lot of interview experience. So Kristen, I'll let you kind of tell everybody more about what you do and a little bit about yourself.
Great. Thank you guys so much for having me today. I really love it. Every time I do this with you, it's always a pleasure. And it's fun. It's fun to get outside my norm and get into this where I can kind of pay it forward a little bit. So I've been with Penn Foster for almost 7 years now. I've been doing talent acquisition and human resources and working with recruiting for the past 5 years now. I'm sorry, I did think about that for a minute. So working with different roles across the organization and at all different levels, and we have over 1,000 employees. So I've been working all different kinds of roles. Time and I'm remote full time. So we have all different hiring ways and factors that we do things now, either by phone or by video. We're moving to a more remote world, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I don't want to start rambling. I said I wasn't going to do that this time, so I'm not. And we'll talk about like how the world is changing, right? It's different. It's a little different now, but most of the rules still apply. Professional etiquette still applies. It's even more important now, right? You're not seeing people face to face. So if you're just getting a phone interview, you really need to put your best foot forward right from the start. So that's a little bit about me. I live in northeastern Pennsylvania. I know we have students everywhere, prospective students everywhere, but that's where we're located. It's been really nice this time of year, and I have a 5-year-old son, and he keeps me busy. And that's all I'm going to say, because I know we have a lot to cover. I'm sorry.
That is true. And I mean, I feel like the fact that you keep rambling is because you know so much about these topics and you have so much great information to share. So we'll definitely take it as a good thing. To everyone watching, as Kristen mentioned, she'll go over how COVID and the pandemic has changed the interview process. And we will talk a little bit about online interviewing, phone interviewing, and tips to prepare for in-person interviews. We'll talk about what hiring managers look for when considering job candidates, what skills employers are looking for right now, how to write a great resume, how to search for remote work, what questions you should ask your interviewer, and advice that Kristen would give to students and graduates searching and applying for jobs right now. So without further ado, let's get into the good stuff. Kristen, as a talent acquisition specialist at Penn Foster, what do you look for during interviews, and what makes a good interview versus a bad interview?
Okay, so so the first thing I look for when I'm talking with someone, regardless of how I speak with them, is what is their interest level in our company and wanting to work for our company? What is motivating you to apply with our company? Do you just need a job? Do you like the job itself? Do you like our culture? Are you interested in our case? We're in the education industry, so are they passionate about education? Not that they have to be, but I look to see if that's something, because that's what we do, right? And there's a certain kind of mindset and personality that goes well with education. So that's what I personally look for. So that's what an hiring manager is going to want to know right off the bat. They're going to want to know why you applied for the job, and then they're obviously going to want to know what skills you have that apply to that job, which will be on your cover letter, and we'll get to the cover letter soon and why that is important that you have one. And it's important how your resume is laid out. So you want someone they're looking for someone that just doesn't just want a job. To be honest, the competition is fierce. If you're going for a role, you don't know what your competition is. Even if you feel you are an expert level in whatever it is that you're going for, there's always someone better. So you have to make sure that your cover letter is good, your resume is good. It could make or break the difference, all things being equal, on whether you get that phone call or you don't. So also, I mean, being engaged when I'm talking to someone, if I feel like they're just saying yes or no and not being engaging back, not following up or expanding on any of their answers, if I have to keep saying, oh, could you expand on that? Or, oh, would you please tell me more? If they're just giving one word quick answers and not digging deep for answers, it's hard for me to get a good read on their personality, and it's hard for me to get a good read on whether they'd be good for the job. I'm looking for someone that's going to fit in with the culture of our company as well. And so are other hiring managers. It's all about mindsets, behaviors, and skills. Obviously, skills matter, but it's not just about the skills. You're competing on all levels. So, yeah, I would say staying engaged, having a pleasant demeanor, asking questions, asking about professional growth. If you appear uninterested, or like say you're interviewing me and I'm over here talking to somebody over here, and oh, hey, am I really invested, right?
Mm-hmm.
So during that time frame, you want to make sure you're engaged, you're invested, you're committed to that person, you're making eye contact with them, the camera or them, and you're expressing your motivation. If you're sitting like this, it's not a good sign. So what you say is one thing, and how you behave is another thing as well. It has to align, and it has to align with their objectives for you to even move forward on the process with them at all.
I feel like it's kind of like something you said reminded me of you know how they say when you do improv, you always say yes and, you wouldn't just stop with a yes or a no. So if you ask a question, it's important that if I give you, if the, response is a yes or no response, that I, elaborate on why my answer was yes or why my answer is no, because that could make or break, how the interviewer takes your response to that question. Like if you say no and they're like, oh, no, but you say no, but it's because of this reason, and you might be able to kind of reason yourself and make yourself seem a little more
for you to bring to light the value that you're bringing to them, right? The value you add to them. So if you don't know anything about the company, make sure you Google it. If you're applying for a position, you should know something about that company, because the minute you send that application in, they may have somebody looking at that and calling you within 30 minutes. Not that that's the norm, but they might. So know where you apply and have an idea of what they do. And I mean, the one last thing I will say about what makes an interview very bad for me and any hiring manager is if you talk badly or criticize your current or previous employer. That is a big no-no. It doesn't matter what else you say. You can say everything great to me that makes me think you're going to be a wonderful fit for us and for our students. But if you start talking about your previous employer in a negative way, it completely turns me off, and I will pass on that person. So just keep that in mind. If you don't like your current employer, just tell them you're looking for a better opportunity with professional growth. Don't talk about, oh, they wouldn't work with me on my pay, they wouldn't work with me on my hours, or they just made these and they put the. Just don't. Less is more. Less is more.
Yes. That's a good point, because you want to make your interview about you and how you are a good fit for the role. And spending time in an interview on things that aren't relevant to you being a good fit for the role could be a distraction.
Yeah, 100%.
So I know that, Kristen, you mentioned that skills and experience are something, once you kind of evaluate a candidate on their personality and how they're behaving in the interview and their professionalism, you're looking to skills and education on a resume. And even before you get to interviewing someone, you're looking at their resume.
Yep.
So this is important. What kinds of skills or education are you particularly looking at, or are hiring managers particularly looking for on a resume?
So the thing about resumes is it needs to be, and I'll just take one step back. It needs to be clear and easy to read within a couple of seconds for them. If it's too long, or if it's written in a way that's not easy to read, it might get passed by. So as far as for resumes, you always want to lead with your strength. So if you're a student or you're a recent graduate, you're going to list your education first, because that's what your strength is your degree or your diploma or your skill, qualifications, credentials, whatever in that world. If otherwise, you would lead with your experience, your career experience, professional experience first, and then your education. So every hiring manager is different. If you look at the job description online, when you're looking for a job, if you feel like your skills and qualifications, and yes, I can do that job, that sounds like something I could do, that's what the hiring manager is going to ask you to know. So if it's a specific software program, if it's basic computer knowledge, some of the roles I interview for are helping our students on the phone. So I'm looking for people who have good communication skills, who have possibly talked to people on the phone before, who are empathetic to students, who have the passion for education. Those are the things that I'm looking for. So it's different for everybody, but it's important for students to know that you would want to lead with your education experience. And it's important that you put the proper dates on your experience, the locations where you worked, your job title, and a bulleted list of duties that you performed. So that so people can easily read it. Because when I look at a resume, the first thing I look at is their employment history. What job titles have they had, and how long did they stay at that job? I'll be honest, if someone has had 10 jobs in the past 2 to 3 years, that's excessive movement between jobs, and likely it's cause for concern, and I likely would pass on their resume. So a lot of managers are the same way. They like people who have stability, people who have 1 to 2 years experience at least. For higher level roles, they're going to require more, but for entry level roles, they're looking for maybe 6 months, a year experience in either customer service or an internship in the field of study that you are interested in or went to school for. So that sort of thing. I hope I'm answering your questions right.
I actually kind of wanted to ask you an offshoot question just based off of something that you mentioned about leading with your strengths. So I think it might be beneficial to recent graduates. So how long would you say after you've graduated would you continue to leave your education as like the forefront of your resume?
Once you get, I would say, like, until you get a job doing what you want to be doing in your field, then
Right.
that moves up to the top, because then that's your strength.
Right.
Whatever your strength is at that time. So and if you're not sure, we have career coaches here at the school, right, that will help you decide, okay, so once you have that job in place and you're in there for 3 months, if it's the job that is applicable to the skills that you're looking for, if it's just like you're working at the bookstore while you're looking for your dream job, career job, you're going to lead with education still.
Right. Okay.
But once
Yeah, that
you
makes
have that
100%
job
sense.
landed, then you're going to lead with experience, because that's what they're going to be the next person's going to be looking for, is that experience.
Right.
And
I think
the education. We look at everything, but
because the last time I was coached on how to write a resume was when I was in college, which was years ago. And when you're in college, they tell you to put that first, but it's hard to know when you should start to like reorder your resume and move things around to be relevant. So this is all great info for everybody listening.
Yeah, once you enter the workforce in your area of study, education goes to the bottom.
Gotcha.
And you could even add like personal interests and other things that you like, even in there as well. So as long as it's on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, as far as now it's kind of, we're in a different world, right? Remote work is kind of, something everybody is looking for. People are preferring that. So the market for those remote work jobs is a lot more competitive even than it was before. How would you say how would you recommend people start looking for that remote work, and what, on their resume or their cover letter or things of that nature could kind of put them a step above to be looked at for those jobs?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So there's a lot more opportunity now for work from home. If you go on, like, even just a Google search on Indeed or any of the other job search engines, you could search for work from home. You could put that in, or you could put remote positions. But you want to make sure that it's fully remote and it's full-time remote, and that it's not temporarily remote, if that's truly what you're seeking. Now, the process for applying wouldn't be any different. You would still want to write a cover letter, still do your resume in a professional way, submit the application. But you could mention on the cover letter why you're interested in applying for the job. Along with your skills, you're interested in the company, you like what the company does, but you are interested in a work from home position. You have experience, not necessarily working from home, but most work from home positions involve a computer, right? So you would want to highlight what computer skills you have on there. You have experience working on multiple systems, in our case, maybe dual monitors. You have a solid internet connection. You can easily multitask. So there's a certain technical ability that they're going to expect you to have if you're working from home. They may even expect you, well, they're definitely going to expect you to have a high-speed internet, and they may expect you to provide your own equipment. So that's something else you're going to want to ask if you're going through the interview process. At Penn Foster, we provide the equipment for everyone. When they're hired, we send them the equipment, we train them on the job. Some places don't. They expect you to have your own. So you're going to want to find out, because that's an investment for you, right? And maybe you have to spend $800 on a laptop or something. So, or maybe more. We don't know what you're going to need for the job, what the job requires. If you're going to have a computer job, it's good to learn some Microsoft programs, Microsoft Word, even Excel spreadsheets. If you know Excel a little bit and you feel like, oh, I should probably brush up, you should brush up, because you can never be too good at Excel. And there's a lot of jobs, because it's remote, they have all this tracking, right? We have all these meetings and we go over data. If you want to be competitive with other people, the world is about computers. So take a tutorial, there's online classes, there's free things you can look up to help you get prepared for remote work. And they will ask you if you have a nice quiet place you can do the job, like where you're not going to be interrupted all day long.
Those are all really good points. And I think the increase in remote work is definitely due to the pandemic, as a lot of jobs that don't need to be done in person now aren't being done in person.
Right.
But, you know, with the pandemic, it's definitely changed more than just the actual jobs and where they can be done, but also the interview process is a big thing that's different. So can you talk a little bit about how to prepare for an interview that's being done remotely? If you're somebody who's always done interviews in person, how do you kind of make that switch?
Yeah, and it's kind of the same, a little different, but kind of the same. I do want to point out, I want to back up for 1 second. I'm sorry, I do this to you guys a lot, but before you even apply for a job, I meant to mention this before, make sure you have a professional email address set up, and make sure your voicemail, please make sure your voicemail is set up on your phone. I cannot stress that enough. Please. Because if you submit applications and they cannot get a hold of you, you will not get the job. And it will be kind of a turnoff because they're not going to keep trying to call you. They might, in some cases, I text people. Most employers aren't going to do that, and they're not going to email you. They're going to think if you don't have a voicemail set up, or if your voicemail's full and they can't leave a message, it will be a turnoff, and they'll just move on. So not that it's bad, it's just a friendly reminder. Like when you apply for jobs, just think, oh, let me check my voicemail, make sure it's clear. Another tip is if you see a number that's I'm not telling you to answer every phone call, but if you submit a lot of job applications and you're getting phone calls from numbers you don't know, it could be a job. So with that said, that's before you even apply. Like get those ducks in a row, then start applying. So the difference for an online interview, like, would be if they're going to do a video interview with you, make sure you dress professionally, at least from, here up. You need to be looking like you would if you were in the office, like, or in person with them, which is one step above what they would normally dress like for the job. So, if people normally wear khakis and polo shirts, you might want to wear a button-down shirt and a tie. It's just one step up from what you think the norm would be there. If you're not sure, just wear a nice sweater or a nice shirt, whatever you're comfortable in, guy or girl, whatever it is, and make sure that you are looking at the camera or looking at the person or in the direction of the camera. You're going to need a device that has a camera, so a phone or a laptop. If you use your phone, make sure that you position it. So, first make sure it's fully charged up and that the ringer is off. And then make sure it's positioned so that they can see your face and not the ceiling fan. So that's my advice. Can you tell I'm a hiring manager?
Actually, I have like a fun tip for your phone if you're using it. There are these little devices called pop sockets. I have one on the back of my phone if you can see it. But it's like $10. You can get them at Target or Walmart, wherever. And you can kind of like pop it out and then put your phone like on top of, if you have a computer, or on top of a book or something. So you don't have to hold it the whole entire time. You can just position it somewhere and it'll stay, so that your hands are free if you need to look at your resume on the side or use your hands for something else, and you're not worrying about it falling or trying to juggle that the whole entire time.
It's a really good idea. That's
also
a great idea.
On the pop socket front, and pop socket did not pay us. I do agree that it's because you could set it up in front of a book or something, but it could fall and then you're fumbling and then it's a whole thing. This is surefire.
Yeah. It's one less thing you have to stress about is juggling your phone. You can just put it somewhere and be good to go.
Right. Yeah. Make sure they can see you. Make sure it's charged. I would say make sure you're by yourself. Make sure you're not going to be interrupted. Make sure someone doesn't come in off camera and start talking to you. Because if you are looking around and distracted, like we said earlier, it's really going to be a bad first impression. You need to be engaged. You need to have, and like Lauren mentioned about your resume, have it handy, because most hiring managers will say, okay, so tell me about your experience, and let's walk me through your resume and tell me what skills you have apply to the role we have posted. And you'll have to talk about it. So have it handy, print it out, or have it on the screen ready to go. Make sure your internet is working well, because that can really, if you have spotty internet and the connection, or you're having a hard time logging in to get into the video meeting, if you appears you have technical difficulties, they may likely pass on you.
Would you say that, you know how when you go for an interview or something, people say if you're on time, you're late, if you're, you know what I mean? Would you say that if someone was logging on for an online interview, that it would be smart to still log on, 10 or 15 minutes early, even if you're just sitting there staring at the screen waiting for your interviewer to come on? At least that way, you can kind of check your internet connection and things like that.
Yeah, I used to tell people that when they were coming to the office to arrive 10 to 15 minutes, not any sooner than that, because then that actually leaves a bad impression. It's weird. Anything more than 15 minutes ahead of time looks weird, and anything if the time of start and after looks weird.
Right. Okay.
So you want to get there about 10 minutes ahead of time, at least 5 minutes, to make sure you can log in. Because if you can't log in, and I tell people this, if you can't log in, call me or text me right away. We'll get it figured out before you have to meet with the manager. That way there's none of this jiggling around at the time they're supposed to be meeting the manager, and we can have it solved beforehand. So, yes, that still applies.
That's a good point. And then you're not wasting the interviewer's time, who might have a meeting right after the interview where
Right.
they can't stay on an extra 10 minutes after they sort through your technical difficulties. So better to get that handled before.
Yeah.
But I feel like a big theme of what you're saying, Kristen, is just showing that you care and developing a good relationship and rapport with the hiring manager, letting them know that you're invested in the conversation and you care about the position and you care about being in the interview.
Yeah,
Right.
you're sitting up, you're like we said before, if you're slouching, if you're looking around, you just need to be in the moment with them and express your passion and excitement for what they do. Whatever it is they do, you want to be part of it. So be positive, be friendly, be yourself, be authentic. Let them see who you are, because they're judging you. Not that they're judging you, but they're judging you on your ability to fit in with the team on many levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at the end of the day, interviewer, interviewee, hiring manager, potential candidate, at the base level, we're all people. So you want the hiring manager, the manager, whoever you're talking to come off that interview. And then when they have to go talk to whoever they talk to, say, even if your skills aren't 100% what they need, but they just enjoyed talking to you and they thought that you really cared, on a personal level, just person to person, that's going to appeal so much more than somebody who just came on and sat like this and read off all of their skills and yada yada. You know what I mean? You want to appeal to people as well as appeal to them as, a potential candidate.
Right. And with all that said too, I mean, it's easy to say, oh yeah, just be yourself and be relaxed. It's an interview, right? It's super nerve-wracking. It's people are nervous. They become robotic. They freeze up. If I ask them a question that they might know the answer to, sometimes their mind goes blank, right? So there's all these factors in there, but just try to be yourself and communicate your skills the best you can. And yeah, just be yourself, really.
That's good. Always good advice, to be yourself. I know you talked a lot about how to prepare for a video interview, but what about a phone interview? which is usually the first step.
Yeah, usually the very first step is the phone interview. It's still the same thing. Make sure your email and phone and everything is working. And you have to sound excited on the phone. I can't see you. I want to get a sense of your personality. I want to know if you're smiling through the phone. There's that whole thing back to it doesn't matter what position you are. People want to work around people who are friendly and helpful and supportive. So that's what you want to convey on the phone. So you might have to be a little more vocal and than you would be in person. Maybe more explaining yourself more or going into detail on something. Because this is when they call you, this is your chance. Consider any time someone calls you from a job to be an interview. A lot of times I will call someone and they don't realize that they're being interviewed right away. So they start saying things they maybe shouldn't necessarily say because they don't think they're in an interview yet. But they are. So assume that, if you're going somewhere to interview in person, as soon as you drive onto their parking lot, interview starts. Throw the cigarette out the window before you get there. Like I'm saying, it starts because you don't know who's watching. You don't know what first impressions matter. So, so that's just, that's what it starts. And make sure that when that person calls you, you're ready. When you apply for a job, you need to be ready when that person calls to talk about why you want that job. And remember that you applied for it as well.
Right. I think that that's something that, we've all probably been in the position where, you're looking for maybe your first job out of school or something of that nature, and you're just on Indeed and you're just hitting that button and you're sending in a million, it's so easy on there to just send your resume to everywhere.
Right.
So making sure that when somebody does call you back, you actually remember that you did apply for that job and not be like, even if you don't remember that moment, you gotta, fake it till you make it.
Look it up quick. Fake it. Yeah, fake it for a minute.
Right.
Fake it for a minute and then quick look it up. Because that is the case sometimes. I find that I do call candidates and they don't remember. They're not sure. And I remind them and then we get on the same page and it's okay. It's very normal for people to apply for many jobs and not remember. Like which company are you again calling from? But it's not that they don't want the job either, because they still want the job. So sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
No, these are all good things to think about. All right. So say you get the call, you're in the interview. Now you have to get into kind of like the meat of the conversation, which is undoubtedly going to be about your skills and what you can bring to the table. So what are some of the key skills? And I know it's different based on different industries and jobs, but what are some key skills that employers are really looking for and that really matter?
It is different for every role. So it's hard. It's a hard question to answer. It's different for every role. I will say again, the computer skills, but you need to have the skills that are applicable to the job on the job description, the software programs that are needed, the education requirement. You're going to need to have those, but you also need to have a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset. And I wanted to bring this up earlier, but it seems more applicable now. What people really want is somebody that's going to come in with a willingness to learn too. Do you have any experience with the requirements of the job? Okay, maybe you don't have as much of experience that we're looking for, but can we train you? Are you coachable? Do you want to grow? Do you want to move up? What's their motivation long term? So they're looking for, every job has very specific skills, right? So they're going to want to know that you can perform those skills. They may test you to see if you know them. They're looking for your work ethic, your reliability, your ability to communicate and work well in a team or with your manager. So those are the things that they're really looking for aside from the skills. Is like a growth mindset isn't a skill, but it's like a core competency of any job is that you would want to have. Same as communication, and depending on the role, if it's a marketing role, you guys work in marketing, maybe they need to have some kind of sales knowledge and promotion knowledge and how to go about marketing a product, right? Whereas our educators need to be skilled in teaching students and relating to students and how to translate curriculum into real world applicable applications. So it's different for everybody. So they're looking at what makes someone great in the role? Does this person have the skills to do the job, but do they have the mindset and drive to be great in the role and grow? And can we make them mold them into what we need them to be for our company and what they want to be for themselves?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely important too, especially if you are going into maybe an industry that you've never been in before. Like you were saying before, somebody might be coming in and applying at Penn Foster who hadn't previously worked, in education or higher education or anything like that. So you kind of have to figure out how the skills that you had in a different industry will translate into the one you're moving into, so to speak, if that makes sense. And same thing if you're coming, right out of school and you're going into a job, the things that made you great at school, like having independence and being able to get your assignments and things done on time, being able to speak to learning those computer skills through your classes, collaboration on projects or big things that you might have worked on, during your education. You have to be able to relate all of those things to the job and the industry that you're trying to go into, even if you didn't have that experience prior.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great points.
For skills like working independently, collaborating well with teammates, and communication, I feel like I see that on almost every single job description I've ever come across in my life. Do you think that employers ask about those specifically more to pick up on red flags if people are actually lacking in those areas? Or do you think that levels of competence in those skills are kind of different depending on what job you're applying for?
The required level of interaction would be different depending on the job, but those 3 skills apply to every job. Like communication skills, there's certain levels there. Like, are they going to need to communicate with high-level people? Are they going to need to communicate with outside customers or vendors? Are they going to need to be able to communicate just internally? Your resume and cover letter, like they're not going to ask you about your communication skills. They're going to communicate with you and see how you respond. So they're going to read your resume. They're going to read your cover letter. That's the first time they know your communication level. Because if there's misspellings in your cover letter, they're not going to call you. So that's the first from the cover letter. And I know you're going to ask about the cover letter too, so I should probably just quick touch on it. It should be like three paragraphs, 3 sentences each about why you like the company, why you're interested in the job, what value you bring, and just that you're looking for an interview. It doesn't need to be long because they're only going to read it in 2 seconds, like literally 2 seconds. And what they're looking for is that you took the time to write it, right? It's not, and customize it. Don't just write to whom it may concern, I want to work for your organization. That is a generic cover letter. Try to at least put the name of the company in there. And call our career coaches here. Jamie will help you customize that if you would like help. And then, but they're reading that real quick to see your personality, if you can communicate clearly, opposite of what I'm doing right now. and that you took the time to reach out and express your interest. And then when they call you, how you respond to when they call you, with your feedback and interactions, and everything forward is going to tell you. So ability to collaborate as well, right? Yeah, because you're always collaborating. Even if you work by yourself for yourself. Say your manager, you're by yourself on a team and you have one person you report to and that's it. Nobody's really micromanaging you, right? You still have to be able to collaborate with other people in the company, other people who, your peers, your manager. You still have to be able to think about solutions to problems and communicate those. So there's ability to collaborate applies to any job ever. It's just at what level they're going to expect you to be able to collaborate. Do they want you to go into meetings and give presentations and collaborate? Or do they just want you to be able to say to your coworker, hey, I don't know how to figure this out. Can we collaborate on this one thing that I am confused about? Yeah. Either way, you have to be able to ask for help.
See, I feel like this is where it gets really interesting to get inside of your mind and know how hiring managers are thinking about these things, because you can see something like communication skills listed on a job description and be like, okay, well, I can talk, so yeah, I can communicate. But knowing how you think about it, from writing a resume and a cover letter that doesn't have spelling errors, that's written clearly, to going through the interview process, being able to really talk well about your experience and your goals, and you know, form a relationship with the hiring manager.
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of an important way to think about how you can really impress that hiring manager and make sure that you're hitting on the more subtle points that they might not be asking you, but kind of looking for you to show them in the interview.
Right. Yeah, and you be humble, be yourself, but yeah, they're looking for you to show your personality a little bit. So when you're communicating, just yeah, like you said, just be open and yeah, it's your time to shine, but not overshine.
Right. I think that there's definitely, a balance between being able to, like speak to your accomplishments and things that you're proud of that you've done. And then there's like bragging, and that's a hard line for a lot of people to find. It's honestly hard for a lot of people to even find the part of them that can be proud of themselves. You know what I mean? They talk about things that they've done that they're proud of, right. But then you don't want to go overboard either. So that's like a really fine line that, just speaking about your accomplishments or writing down how you feel about things that you've done, and rereading it and saying, does that sound, weird to say, or, just different ways of trying to figure out how that communication could be interpreted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, it's okay to even bring in a little bit of your personal life into, you have life experiences, right? Like everything that led you to this job application and interview with me, like pretending you were in an interview now, it's not just your job experiences, it's your life experiences. So if you reference life experiences on how you can overcome something, on to explain your work ethic, your passion, your personality, your drive, hey, this is what I can do. It doesn't even have to be work related, right? So as long as they have that, like I would say, I love the word grit that you're looking for in the job, that's what matters.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. And showing, like, for example, like your work ethic in the way that you write your cover letter, how you speak during an interview, that is genuinely proving you're not just saying like, oh, I'll be committed to this job. That's kind of you proving it. And it can come across as more genuine when you're putting it to the context of how you are and how your personality is.
Yep.
So
yeah, and don't just say, yes, okay, sign me up, yes, and don't be afraid to ask them questions. You're interviewing them too. You may need this job so bad, desperately, right? But don't just say, yes, sign me up, I'm so eager. Make sure that you ask them questions, because they, especially if it's a job where you can negotiate a salary, right? Don't tip your hand too much. Is what I'm trying to say. Just make sure that you know what you're getting into.
All right, well, let's take a step back before we take a step forward, because I definitely want to get into questions that you should ask the interviewer, or the applicant should ask the interviewer. But I did just want to get to before that our big topic of cover letters, because I know we've been teasing that a lot in this conversation. And we spoke about resumes a bit. So resumes being a place where you can highlight your education, your skills, and your experience.
Right.
Cover letters oftentimes can be optional in a job application.
Right.
So my first question around those is, why is it important to write a cover letter? Do you need to write a cover letter for every job? Are hiring managers looking at them? Just give us a little context into how much that matters.
It matters. It doesn't matter a lot.
Okay.
Some people are very big on it. So here's what I'll say first is you don't know where you're applying and you don't know who's looking at it. Some people love a cover letter. That's why I would suggest you always write one, a short one, expressing your interest in the role, what value you bring. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. That's all you need. You need like a very short, less is more cover letter, but it just shows that you take the time. So sorry, I had something to say, but I forgot. So it's important that you write it. You don't have to. I still look at every resume, regardless of if there's a cover letter there or not. I care more about what you have on the resume than what you put on the cover letter. If there's a cover letter there, I will read it. If you don't feel you can write, if the job requires it, do it and have someone help you and proofread it. And our career coaches can. If you're questioning your ability to write one and you're unsure and it's optional, don't do it. Because if you write a bad cover letter, it will seal your fate and you will not get the phone call. It's better to have no cover letter and a good resume than have a bad cover letter, which will lead me to not even look at your resume. Does that make sense? So I would suggest it, but I would suggest it if you know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, call our career coaches and Jamie she'll write it for you.
All right, so really quick question. How do you contact the career coaches?
So Jamie Kapalko's number is 1-800-572-1682. Are you guys going to put this up on the thing too for them to see?
Yes.
Okay, and her email is careercoaches, all one, careercoaches @pennfoster.edu.
Perfect.
Jamie Kapalko, she's awesome. She's been doing it for years. She knows exactly what all the cutting edge resume and cover letter stuff should be. I'm giving you my viewpoint as a hiring manager, right? And as a former career coach. I know what I'm looking for. I can tell you that not everybody's me, right? Everybody's looking for something different. But I can tell you they want to know you're passionate about the job. They want to know you have a good work ethic and that you can fit in with their team and do the job. Right. Show up for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're doing this cover letter and you're trying to keep it short and to the point, what are some key things to include when you aren't trying to take up a full page?
So you basically want to, if you have any knowledge of the company or can establish like something you have in common or can relate to it, like in our case, like if I was applying for a job at Penn Foster, I have been a student before. I've been an online student before. So if you can relate to them in some way, but what you want to do is address it. If you know the person's name, address it to them directly. Otherwise, you could put human resources. You could put dear hiring manager. I'm excited. I'm excited to whatever words you want to use, but in this general idea of I'm excited to see your job for the blah, blah, blah posted. I'm excited because I have experience in this field doing X, Y, and Z, and those are where you're going to input your skills. I feel I could be an important part or add value to your team based on my years of experience and my or based on my recent education. I look forward to learning more about the role and growing with your company. I would appreciate very much to speak with you and just thank you for your time. It only really needs to be just a little, like even one paragraph is enough, but customized, like specify the name of the role so that they know that you are interested in them.
Because I'm sure it's like super easy to pick out, you know, if somebody has a cover letter that they use for everything, because there's not going to be specifics in it, you know. It's going to say to whom it may concern. It's going to say, I'm very excited to see that your position was posted, and like, no, don't name the position. You know, those generic cover letters are probably a big downfall for people, especially for jobs that require them, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. Just make sure you're checking to make sure you're changing the name of the job title.
Right.
Because I honestly see quite a bit that have a different job title on them. So, and I know it's a generic, and that's okay if it's generic, but make it look as customized as you can.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be lengthy. They will not read it. They will just go right to your resume. So what you want to do is, I saw this job, I'm really excited. Here's why. Here's my value. Please call me. Thank you. Like, that's what you really look at. My resume. My resume highlights my experience and qualifications. Boom. Then they move on to, you don't need to reiterate anything from your resume onto your cover letter, because that's what the resume is for.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes a world of sense. You know, I think that it's very easy to start typing a cover letter and to throw a million things in there, and if they're already on your resume, it's not necessary.
Yeah, because you'd be like, oh, I have this. Oh, I know that too. Oh, I'm just, yeah, okay. And I really want them to know that they know, because it's on, if it's on your resume, and if you have volunteer work and you do things extracurricular that are community involved, put that on your resume as well. Huge plus.
That's a good point.
Yep.
A lot of companies and organizations too do actually value giving back to their local communities and sending their employees out to volunteer. So showing that you already care about different organizations and causes, I feel like is a great plus.
Right.
Yeah, and in addition to that, even if you took training classes or courses, and to say it's not like a school, but it was a class and you got certified in something, put that on your resume. Because what that shows is that you have enough motivation to go out on your own and seek extra knowledge in something, and you have the desire to learn. And you're going to do that. You're not doing that because someone told you to. You did that on your own. It has a very good impression.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I don't mean to sound like I'm yelling. I'm not yelling.
You're not.
You're just passionate. That's like
I am.
That's the theme of today's conversation, is showing your passion.
Right.
And I feel like to all of our viewers, if you're watching Kristen talk about this stuff, it's clear that she's passionate about her job and knows what she's talking about. So you're setting a good example in that sense.
Good.
We were interviewing you to manager. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll switch gears a little bit back to a topic we kind of touched on earlier, but we need to definitely dive into, is that part of the interview, usually at the end, where the hiring manager or whoever you're speaking to asks you what questions you have for them. And this can get tricky because, you know, I've been in interviews where the person that I'm talking to was like, oh, I think you kind of covered everything, I'm good, and it gets a little weird. So this is definitely you know, a big thing to think about. So what would you recommend for this section of the interview where they ask you what questions you have?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said happens all the time. There's so many times the interviewer doesn't have, or the interviewee does not have any questions because everything was covered, but have something prepared. Because
every time.
Yeah, because it's so hard when you're in an interview, because you got all this information and you're put on the spot and you're like, no, I don't know what I don't know what to ask you. I know I have a question, but I don't know what it is, right? So have a couple prepared ahead of time that you just throw off the cuff. So like we mentioned before, make sure you did some research on the company, right? So then as a follow-up, you can ask them, and I love when people ask this question, what is your company culture like? What is professional development like? What are my peers like? That's a really good question because honestly, you want to know it anyway. So just ask it, right?
And I feel like those are questions you can ask for every single job in every single interview. Like those apply to every single company.
Yes. So it's a good, if you don't have anything else to ask them, if you can't think of anything else, ask them about that, their company culture, their professional growth, and that sort of thing. Now, if it's a remote job, you might want to, it depends on if they're making you come in the office. You want to ask about the work from home situation during COVID times. Are they going to be asking you to travel? Are they going to be asking you to go to an office somewhere? If so, what are the requirements? Do I have to meet with customers or clients? What are the requirements for that? So there are things you're going to want to touch on from a COVID standpoint, and ask about their policies for that. But if it's just work from home, then you might not have to worry about that anyway.
Right.
So, but yeah, the company culture and professional growth questions, those are two to keep in your back pocket.
That's great. That's great advice because, like I said, I am the queen of not having a question to ask at the end of the interview. I'm usually like so gung ho throughout the whole thing, and then they get to that last question, and I'm like, oh
no. Like, I'm good. When can I sign up?
Yeah, that's literally what I do all the time. So that's definitely great to have those two because, like Lauren said, you're 100% right. They apply to every job. Every job.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Also, I'll just say for me, like, I don't mind getting questions when people ask, like, what's a typical day in the role? And that's another one that could be applied to any job. And it gives you as a hiring manager a moment to speak a little bit more about the job from like your personal perspective, and what you want for the role. So I think it could kind of be cool, a cool part of the interview to really share more passionately about what the role is and see if it's a good fit for the person you're speaking with.
Absolutely.
That's a really good idea because even if they go into like what you do in the role and the tasks, what a day in the life looks like is much different sometimes than that. So that's a really good question. It's a good way for the candidate to interview the company.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, the job market, as you mentioned right now, is very competitive. Things are still weird with the pandemic. There are just a lot of factors happening in the job market right now in the world. But, we all have to keep moving forward, and that includes applying for jobs. Most of your life is spent at work, or waking hours, maybe not your life. So, it's a big deal. So what advice would you give to students or graduates who are at that important point in their career journey of applying for jobs right now?
Well, if you're applying for jobs right now, I know it's kind of like the wilderness out there. Just stay positive. Keep learning as much as you can. Keep looking. Make sure you customize for each application you're doing. Make sure you customize your resume or your cover letter for that job. If you need help with practicing interviewing or help with writing your resume or with cover letter or anything like that, or even looking for jobs, Jamie, the career coach, she will help you. So right now, I would just stick to Google and Indeed and all the job search engines. Make sure your resume is up to date, and just check it every day. There's so many jobs out there right now. Like just keep plugging along and give us a call, the career coaches a call if you need help, because we can help you I say we, but I'm talking about Jamie, can help you from the point of even if you don't even know what to put on your resume, we can send you a template. You can fill in all the stuff, and we'll practice video interviews with you and sit down and look for jobs and say, okay, here's what we're gonna do in the interview. Say this, don't say that, and customize it for each job so that when I was a career coach, I would students would call me when they were on their way to the interview and say, okay, I'm interviewing at XYZ company. And we coach on how to get through that specific interview with them.
Yeah, that is really awesome. And we'll definitely, for everyone watching, we'll drop Jamie's contact info in the comments so that you have it. You can reach out to her and talk more specifically about your questions, get advice on your resume, and all those great interview tips. But Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today. This is always my favorite Facebook Live when we get to have you on, because you just have such great advice, and I think it's genuinely helpful to get to hear all of these tips for resumes, interviews, cover letters, right from a hiring manager. To know what you're thinking about is so different than how people may assume hiring managers think or what they're looking for. So thank you so much for kind of letting us pick your brain and get all these great insights.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I jump around a lot.
It was literally
I try not to.
Everything that you said is like a wealth of knowledge that is, you know, people don't get all the time. So this, you know, this Facebook Live, everything that you said, and even if we did jump around, every single piece of advice that was given is important, especially now. You know, we're saying the job market is very competitive, especially for those remote jobs. Everybody's, you know, just trying to stay on their feet and trying to do their best, and everything that you touched on today is going to help, you know, students and people who are applying for jobs, you know, just put their best foot forward. So good. Thank you for all of that, for your wealth of knowledge, because people like even me, you know, that knowing, you know, like I said, my biggest downfall in an interview is that last question, and now I have that in my back pocket for if I ever need it, you know. And a lot of people could use that information, so it is wonderful to get to talk to you today.
Yes, thank you. I mean, just be authentic, be yourself, and stay positive. And I mean, I could talk. I have 28 more slides I could go over all about stuff. But yeah, so, and one last tip, make sure that when you sit down for the interview and you can see yourself, just look at your clothes and make sure there's nothing weird about them. There's nothing like just that the frame looks okay in the shot.
That's a good tip.
All right.
And to everyone watching, when you do land that really great job, share it on social media. Make sure to tag us. We love seeing what you accomplish and sharing that out with our networks too. So make sure you tag at Penn Foster, and you know, we always love to see it. So thank you all for joining us today, watching this, absorbing hopefully all of this great advice, and we'll see you all soon.
Bye. Thank you for having me here. Bye.